All right, good morning, all. Welcome to Fossil Creek Nursery's continuing series of live streamed plant talks. My name is Dan Hartwig, Colorado certified nursery professional. Today's talk is going to be about how to kill a tree. Yeah, we got a little snarky with that title. And disclaimer here, this is a talk about what not to do. If you do actually want to kill a tree, hire a professional to do that. That's the end of actually how to kill a tree. How not to kill a tree, there's a lot we can go into that. It seems like when you're, studying any topic, a really good thing to start with is what not to do. So this is going to be a top 10 list of things not to do. So number one way to kill a tree, again, what not to do. Number one way to kill a tree is poor selection. So Fossil Creek Nursery, we're on 15 acres. We have between 5,000 and 7,000 trees in stock at any given time. And I'll tell you right away, each and every one of them is perfect for someone, for some place in a landscape somewhere in northern Colorado. Again, we do not sell anything that is not hardy to zone 5 according to the USDA. Just a reminder, all that is the minimum low sustained temperature that plant can survive. All right. Number one way you can go wrong with choosing a tree poorly, with poor selection, is the water needs of that tree. Tell you right away that it's super important when planning your landscape to put plants with similar water requirements next to each other. That concept is what we call hydrozoning. Also, consider the mature size of a tree. The sizes of nursery stock are available is not what that tree is going to look like mature. Friendly reminder, evergreens especially never stop growing. They do not have an all-out mature size. What you will see again on that grower's tag is a 10-year size. They've chosen to do that because on an average, that's when homeowners rip out their landscape and start over, is every 10 years. I hear this a lot from my customers. I remind them, it's like, no, I wouldn't plant a Picea pungens, Colorado blue spruce, 6 feet from your home, because when it's mature, this tree is going to be 75 foot tall with a 25-foot skirt. The response I get is, we'll be dead by then. Well, that makes me feel a little awkward, but the most important thing is, and I've started telling my customers this, yes, I understand that you will not be around to enjoy this tree, but if you plant this tree 6 feet from your house, in about 10 years, someone who does live in that home, who probably takes a lot of pride and really enjoys living in that nice place, is going to have to spend a lot of money, to the tune of thousands of dollars, to cut down and kill a beautiful living thing. All right. Other thing you can do in poor selection is ignore common insects and diseases. Certain trees in certain climates are susceptible to certain insect and disease problems. Also, remember, when I talk about disease problems, a lot of the time, we've determined in our industry about 90% of diseases are abiotic, meaning they are not caused by an insect, a fungus, a virus, a bacteria. They are caused by factors such as soil, weather, water, soil chemistry. All right. Number one way to avoid killing a tree by avoiding poor selection, look around for what grows well. If you see a really unique tree that you've never seen before, there's a chance that there's not a lot of them around for a reason. I think you will be happier with common successful trees than you will with exotic sickly trees. All right, number two way to kill a tree, inadequate root system. All right, always check the root ball size. The USDA for a ball and burlap tree has legal requirements for how big the root ball must be in comparison to the caliper of the tree in the case of a deciduous tree, or the height of a tree in the case of a multi-stem or evergreen tree. For example, a 2-inch caliper or deciduous tree or 6-foot evergreen tree, USDA says that root ball must be 28 inches across. Hey, call us out on it. Check us. I will be more than happy to caliper a tree or to measure the root ball for any customer. Especially with established nursery stock, it's not an inexpensive purchase. Check on us, make sure we're doing our job. Avoid smaller containers. I discourage people from planting trees in number 5 and smaller containers. The reason why is that root ball that's been living inside that container is that tree's life support system. There's a reason that trees usually die. If they're going to die, it's usually after about the 3rd season. The reason why is because that's when that tree's life support system, the nutrients, the roots in that root ball, that's when they run out and when it's got to start living in our soil. All right. Also, finally, smaller sizes transplant the best. I think the sweet spot for a nice combination of an established tree, but something that will take reasonably quickly into the ground is a 2-inch calipered deciduous ball and burlap tree, a 6-foot height measured evergreen, or an 8-foot clump deciduous tree. Number 15 seems to be the sweet spot for container trees. It's a nice combination of a decent sized tree with a nice root ball. Again, I'm calling that its life support system. And again, avoid very small nursery stock. I understand that various organizations give out very small seedlings. They do not take well. If I was going to get one of those, what I would do is I would pot it up into a number 15, let it establish its roots for a year before planting that thing. Number 3 way to kill a tree: poor site planning. All right. Trees are not inexpensive. You're buying a living thing that's been under the care of a grower or a nursery or greenhouse for between 3 and 8 years, depending on the size and species you get. Spend $35, send a soil sample off to Colorado State University's Horticulture Extension. The basic panel costs $35. It's the best $35 you'll ever spend. You will get back information about your soil texture, structure, acidity or lack thereof, which is going to be its cation exchange capacity, the nutrients found in it, the percentage of organic matter. And if you tell them what you're planting, what you'd like to plant in there, for example, I want to plant an Acer Jeffers Red, a autumn blaze maple, they will either recommend an amendment plan, or sometimes they will all out come back and say, hey, we do not recommend planting that plant in this soil. Okay, pick the tree to match the soil you have. Send off that soil sample. Come in, talk to your nursery professional here at Fossil Creek. We will start with the site, not with the plant. Bring us pictures, bring us measurements, bring the results of your soil sample, which I cannot recommend strongly enough. We will pick a tree, help you pick a tree based on that soil, based on that site. Don't start with the plant. Don't say I must have an autumn blaze maple if you don't have the site for it. You're going to be a lot more flexible in choosing a tree rather than trying to adapt that tree to the site. Finally, check the drainage. A lot of trees do not like wet feet. There are very, very few trees that we sell that tolerate poor drainage. The best way to check the drainage is dig your hole, fill it up with a hose, let it soak out, and then refill it. If it's not dry in an hour, you probably want to avoid a certain number of plants. Again, talk to your nursery professional. We can find you something that'll tolerate your soil conditions, including your soil drainage. Number 4 way to kill a tree: pot-bound or girdling nursery stock. So never, ever, ever buy a tree from a nursery who will not pop it out of the container for you and show you the root system. Of course, be kind to your nursery professional. I can't pop a number 25. But number 15 and smaller, ask to see those roots. Also, inspect the roots of a ball and burlap tree. Make sure that root ball is intact. Make sure it's not disintegrating. Make sure it hasn't been there too long. Some roots coming out of that root ball of a ball and burlap tree is a good thing. All roots coming out, and if you see the burlap completely disintegrated, I would pass on that tree. All right. Reject that tree if it's got thick spiraling roots. Now, if we see thin roots spiraling around that tree, that's okay. We can deal with that. But if you see thick girdling roots, go ahead and reject that tree for another one. Roots girdling around the root flare, reject that tree. Don't buy it. Trying to repair that with your pruners is just going to cause more trouble than it's worth. Buy another tree. Remember, the important part of that tree lives below the ground. Yeah, you want to pick a tree with nice structure, with nice symmetry, but remember, what's below the ground is much more important than what you're seeing above the ground. All right. Finally, now if you do choose a tree that has small spiraling or girdling roots, take your utility knife, put a clean blade in it that you've never used, and make scoring cuts exactly the depth of the blade of your razor knife. Scuff up those roots with your 3-prong scratcher. That root ball should no longer look like a cylinder. It should look like a little hedgehog. All right, number 5 way to kill a tree. Dig too small of a hole. Yeah, I understand. Our soil is hard to work. It is dense, it is clay, it is alkaline, it is tough to work. Don't put a $500 tree in a $5 hole. What we're trying to establish by digging a wide, again, I'm going to say wide, but not deep hole, is a transition zone. Yeah, that tree's got its life support system in either the root ball or, in the ball and burlap for the root ball, or in the root zone of a container tree. That's its life support system. It's going to keep it going by for a year or two, but eventually it's going to have to get used to living in our soil. That's why we want to dig a wide hole and give that plant a transition zone between the roots it has now and where it's eventually going to have to get used to living in our crummy, dense, alkaline clay soil. Number 6 way to kill a tree, planting it too deep. All right, here is a corny rhyme I share with customers over and over again is this: plant it high, it won't die. Plant it low, it won't grow. Why is that? Well, 3 reasons. First of all, the best roots are at the bottom of either the root ball or the container. If we put those so deep into the soil that water and nutrients aren't going to get down there, that tree is going to suffer and die. The root flare, which is where the main leader flares out and meets the root ball, is a really, really vulnerable part of that tree physiologically. It is very susceptible to fungus infections and wounds in that part of the tree. It can be a vector for insects and diseases to get in. It can kill that tree very, very quickly. Finally, 3rd reason, wet feet. By planting a tree up high, we are improving the drainage. We are putting the best roots where they're actually getting some water and nutrients, and we are letting it dry out. Trees do not like wet feet. Please remember that the only way that trees and all other woody plants, regardless of their deciduous or evergreen, can get water and nutrients from the soil is from the tiny hair-like structures on the end of their feeder roots. Remember, the big roots that are closer to the root flare, the wind roots, their only job is to keep that tree from tipping over. But those little feeder roots, like I said, tiny little structure called cilia, look like tiny hairs if you look under a hand lens or a microscope. They can only get water and nutrients from the soil when that soil is just about to dry out. If that soil is consistently wet, that tree cannot feed and will die. If that soil is consistently dry, that tree cannot feed and will die. Of course, one of the most difficult things is the symptoms of underwatering, dehydration, and the symptoms of overwatering, oxygen asphyxia, are very, very similar. Final thought on planting too deep is, I think I've got a theory on why people plant things too deep is because, in my case too, the first thing I ever planted as an amateur gardener was a tomato. Tomatoes, they love being buried deep. They are actually covered with psylla, with proto-roots. Bury that tomato up to the top 2 little leaves. Every one of those psylla will become a feeder root. Trees and tomatoes are physiologically really, really different. Don't treat your tree like a tomato. Number 7 way to kill a tree: mulch or not mulched. All right, here's the good thing about mulch. Keeps down weeds, keeps water in, keeps lawnmowers and string trimmers away. Remember, the root flare is a really vulnerable point of that part of that tree. A ding on there with a lawnmower or string trimmer can kill that tree. Our industry calls that injury lawnmoweritis. All right, avoid using rock as mulch. Rock has 3 serious problems. First of all, it doesn't work keeping down weeds, even with weed barrier, which is another thing you should never use. It gets hot, desiccates the root system of that tree, and finally, it reflects sunlight to the underside of leaves of trees, which can trigger the wilt response. So, mulch is decaying organic material. It's not rock. Never pull up old mulch, replace it with new mulch. Put new mulch over the top, because remember, that mulch is decomposing and adding to the organic material in the soil. All right. Too much mulch can trap excessive moisture. Basically, we want to make the mulch around our tree into a big volcano. Only an inch deep around the trunk, but you're going to create a big crater up to 4 inches around the outside of that. Number 8 way to kill a tree: staking or improper staking. All right, this is important. Staking is not always required. The only trees that you should stake are tall or leggy trees. Remember, the purpose of staking is to anchor the root ball. You do not want that root ball moving around in the soil, because every time it's going to get feeder roots into the transition zone and is moved around, it's going to damage those. Remember, we're only staking a tree to anchor the root zone. We are not staking a tree for the part you see above the ground. All right. Remember, anchor the root ball. The point of staking is not to eliminate movement. Here's the problem with staking trees longer than needed, which should only be 1 year. Never stake a tree for longer than a year. Or staking trees that don't need it is twofold. First of all, those stakes can cause wounds. And second of all, that will encourage that tree to get top heavy. That tree, when it's moving around in the wind, its physiological response to bending repeatedly is to create more lignin, the structural tissue that gives that tree some rigidity. All right, number 9 way to kill a tree: improper watering. This is huge. Remember, this is important. Too much water kills a lot more trees in northern Colorado than too little water. I'm going to say that again because it's super important. Too much water kills quicker and easier than too little water. The way I describe it is like, yeah, I like a glass of water on a hot summer day, but I do not like my head held under the pool if it can be helped. All right. Turf grass, lawn, and trees are not friends. They have seriously different water requirements. Lawn likes frequent, shallow waterings. Trees like the exact opposite. They want deep but unfrequent waterings. Now, if you are going to use your lawn irrigation to irrigate your tree, 2 things to consider. First of all, take all that water that you're putting on your turf grass throughout the week, do it all at once. Don't have it running 15 minutes 4 times a day. Have it running 60 minutes. Pardon me. Don't have it running 15 minutes 4 times a week. Have it running 60 minutes once a week. And actually your turf grass will thank you for it too, because it's going to encourage a deeper root system than if all the water and nutrients are just in that top inch or so of topsoil. That's exactly where the roots are going to stay. All right. Now, as far as water requirements, our industry categorizes trees' water use as low, medium, high, or very high. that water use is based on, as a baseline measurement, uses the water requirement of Kentucky bluegrass, the most commonly used variety of lawn turf grass. So assuming that Kentucky bluegrass is a 1 as far as water use, a low water use requirement tree is a 1/4, meaning a low water use tree needs 1/4 the water weekly as Kentucky bluegrass. A medium is half the water use of Kentucky bluegrass. A high is 3/4 the water use of Kentucky bluegrass, and a very high is the same water use as Kentucky bluegrass. I can only think of 1 or 2 very high water use trees that we sell here at Fossil Creek, and they're both trees that are going to get 100-foot tall with a 100-foot canopy. So it's they're not useful for a lot of home landscapes. So most important thing to remember is just don't count on your lawn irrigation as being enough. If a good rule of thumb is 10 gallons per week per inch of caliper. For example, I planted a 2-inch caliper ball and burlap tree at my place. The way I figured to give it 20 gallons of water once a week is I took my hose with the diffuser. I counted how long it took to fill up my 5-gallon bucket. Turned out to be 25 seconds. I multiplied that by 4. So my weekly watering of my tree, which is outside of my turf grass, is I get out there with the diffuser, slowly count to 100. It's plenty of water. Remember, scrape back that mulch, stick your finger in the soil, make sure it's drying out a little bit between waterings. Your fingers are one of the most important tools you can use. Stick them in the soil. It's good for you. Number 10 way to kill a tree: failure to monitor. All right. I understand some people want fire and forget landscaping. They want to put everything on a drip. They want it to be maintenance free. They want it to be automated. Now, yeah, that's really convenient, but it's going to be really, really bad for the trees you planted, which are not inexpensive. By getting out there and what we call scouting our landscape, that is one of the key preventative actions we can take when we're talking about what we call IPM, integrated pest management. Scouting is one of the #1 rules of integrated pest management. What that's going to do is it's going to catch problems when they're small. If you do see a problem with your tree that you purchased here at Fossil Creek Nursery, and you see a problem with it, let's deal with it when it's small. Me and the other certified nursery professionals here, we can troubleshoot problems when they're small a lot more than we can troubleshoot serious problems. And one thing we cannot troubleshoot is a dead tree. Get out there, look at your landscape, look at your trees, look for signs and symptoms of abiotic damage, meaning damage not caused by insects or diseases, and insect infestations. Finally, the best thing about scouting is you paid for this stuff. Get out and enjoy it. That's all I've got on that. All right, here's some final thoughts about how to kill a tree, or how not to kill a tree. Avoid gardening hacks. Now, what do I mean by a hack? I mean, like, that's a folk remedy. That is something that is not proven by peer-reviewed scientific trials. That's why I always recommend to my customers, and I do this too, whenever me or you are going to do anything that has to do with landscaping, gardening, horticulture, if you're going to look it up on the internet, add the word extension to your search. If you don't, say, I want to learn about Acer Jeffers Red, Autumn Blaze Maple. You type in Autumn Blaze Maple, the first site that's going to come up is the grower, whoever holds the patent on that tree, and they're going to tell you all the awesome things about that tree. Are there awesome things about that tree? Absolutely, it's an awesome tree. Now, if you look at Colorado State University's extensions entry on that tree, you're going to get the awesome information about that tree and the things that are not so awesome. You're going to find out what their concerns about that tree is, and they're going to give you a serious assessment of, is this the right plant, right place. So use peer-reviewed science, avoid hacks. I get questions like, should I throw rebar or nails in with my tree for the iron? It's like, well, it's not going to hurt that tree, but it could hurt it could hurt someone when they've got to dig it up in 75 to 125 years because you're still going to have rusty nails down there. Iron, not all iron is iron. Yes, trees need iron, especially some trees like maples, but they cannot, that's the wrong availability of iron. They cannot get iron from the soil through rusty nails or rebar. They need it to be chelated liquid iron. All right, so avoid gardening hacks. If anyone has ever given you a gift of a book by a guy named Jerry Brown, who calls himself America's Gardener, don't believe any of that. It's all garden hacks. None of it is peer-reviewed science. Next thought: use the right amendment. Now, when we did our class on how to plant a tree, how to plant a shrub, what the rule of thumb is: 1/3 amendment, 2/3 of the soil you took out of that hole. 90% of the time, the amendment I'm going to recommend is an all vegetable acidified compost. There's very, very few circumstances where that's not the right amendment. Remember, compost, not potting mix, and here's why. Potting mix is shredded up peat moss. The point of potting mix is to retain moisture. The point of our clay soil is to retain moisture. Please, potting mix goes in our container gardens, in our pots. Do not use potting mix as an amendment. Do not use any products by Miracle-Gro. This stuff is, Miracle-Gro potting mix is, if you read the ingredients, it says shredded forest products. To me, that means chipped up pellets with petrochemical fertilizer in it with way too much nitrogen. Our newly established tree doesn't need nitrogen. It needs time to get its roots into that transition zone. So use the right amendment. I would also discourage the use of compost that has animal manure. With our dense clay, poorly draining soil, what you put in that soil, it's going to stay in there indefinitely, including the salts from manure. Final thought, and this goes without saying, is, no, nothing goes without saying, otherwise people wouldn't do it. Ball and burlap trees, cut off the cage. That's all there is to it. Cut off every bit of that cage. You'd be surprised how many landscapers will plant a ball and burlap tree, backfill it with that cage in place. That cage has basically started the timer on the death of that tree. It's got about 5 years to live if you plant it with that tree, because its roots will swirl, girdle within that cage. It will choke it out. All right. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us on our plant talk. My name's Dan. Come see me with any questions you have about trees, planting, and get out there and don't kill your trees. Thanks for your time today.